losers. They're winners, like me. A loser's a loser. Which one will you be?
That book is hysterical, and I love it. That said, I'm gonna take a chance of criticizing Trump here because I don't think I've done this in this page yet, and I've already said like 3 times that I like him. So that's a good time to do it. Uh, Having like this winner and loser mentality is a horrific thing for your psychology, okay? Because we live in a world that was globalized and we evolved for a world with like something between 150 and 253 people, which are like the two variations of the Dunbar number for social, large ape primate humans. And yeah, so what's going to happen is if you conceptualize the world in terms of competition and in terms of winners or losers or in terms of comparison, then for 99% of the people, because you're now comparing yourself not with 150 people, which would be normal, or 200 people, which would be normal, but instead of 200 million people or 150 million people or even a billion people, if you have internet and TikTok, then you're like extraordinarily likely to come out on the side of the losers, right? Because there's like 10 winners out of like 10 million people, and then there's 9 million losers or more. So yeah, you don't want to think about things in terms of winners or losers. You don't want to have that mentality. That doesn't work for the vast majority of people. They become extremely unhappy. Now, could you make the case that Donald Trump is happy by doing that? Theoretically, you could. Because Trump has been a winner in literally like 5 different domains in where he is like literally, the top, like the alpha male, so to speak, in many different domains, from like getting women from the feminine and hot sides of the globe to dating the most attractive women in the world to winning the media with The Apprentice to becoming the most powerful person on earth by becoming the US president to making billions of dollars, which is extraordinarily rare, right? There's like 2,000 billionaires in the world. So yeah, so for Trump, that's how it played out. But here's the thing: not even Trump is happy because Trump isn't a narcissist. I know a lot of people like to accuse him of being that, but he has something called narcissistic style, which is when you have some of the properties of the DSM-5 for narcissism, but not all of them. And I am the same kind of like narcissistic style that Trump is, which is a narcissistic altruist, which is basically like you want to be the person making the world better for others, and you want to be seen and recognized as that. So you want like it's kind of like you have the desire for that narcissistic glory, but the way in which that desire expresses is via altruism. So my PhD is about altruism. Like Trump has done a bajillion things for a bajillion Americans. Actually, let me give you the technical explanation of narcissism, just so you have like a better idea than whatever the media has been telling you lately. So, like narcissists are usually people who are in constant like pain and struggle and agony because we all have self-regulating mechanisms that as we grow from becoming like toddlers to infants to children to teenagers to adults, especially in that like last transitional stage, we stop conceptualizing ourselves as like the number, so to speak, or the amount of value that other people assign to us, right? That's what teenagers do. When you're like 12, like nothing in the world matters more than what other people think of you. So, like other people are assigning you a number, and then you use that number, your idea of that number, to evaluate it. So, in the case of narcissists, what happens is that you never reach that final developmental stage. So, there is no point at which this becomes internalized and you have a self evaluation notion and you think of yourself as X amount of valuable, regardless of what other people are thinking of you, which means that you have to regulate the image of how other people think of you the entire time. So, if you have the personality disorder narcissism, the way that that's going to manifest is you're going to be trying to regulate the amount of attention and devotion that you get, but also like the pain is so excruciating, right, that you create a shell structure of a person so that you can emulate whatever you believe that other people are going to keep in adoration all the time. And of course, that's like an extremely painful thing. And that is basically how a narcissist constitutes a personality to begin with, right? Because they need to like regulate that number to be on the high. and it just goes lower if you're not constantly being given that number by the outside world. Then what happens in the case of people who have like narcissistic style and that kind of thing is like you have some amount of that. So we can regulate our view of ourselves a little bit by ourselves, but we need a little bit of validation from the external environment. Something very counterintuitive that people don't get is, I mean, the most common thing you need to do if you know a person who has narcissistic personality disorder is just leave. But if you can't leave for some reason, if you love the person, if they're like your sibling or whatever, then counterintuitively, you actually should praise the narcissist, because they are in excruciating pain and they will obtain that amount of like self directed validation that in the image of how they see others seeing them. So if people don't, they will just crave for more. They will do more like shiny, crazy, weird things. They will push themselves harder and more towards the edges. They will become more unhinged because they need that validation, like in the same, like they need it in the same sense that you need like calories to survive, right? Like it's not like something you can go without. Um, so if you give it to the person, then they can create a story that isn't too distorted, where they are being validated by the external world and people like them at that particular threshold level. And then the pain subsides, and without the pain, the narcissist doesn't need to do anything that's like particularly, horrible and deleterious for the world. The thing that happens when idiots who don't understand narcissistic personality disorder deprive the narcissist of any kind of validation and exterior validation, or even worse, like say bad things, is that person creates an entire world structure in their minds that conceptualizes themselves as being like adored, which means that they become literally like schizo level delusional and they completely lose track of what's going on in reality. Again, because the pain is just too much. So yeah, concept like have some empathy to some extent, for like the narcissistic anguish, especially people who have narcissistic style like me and Trump, but don't have the personality disorder. Because basically, like with a little bit of praise, they're good to go. And some of us are actually altruistic and are actually trying to do these things for the world, not for ourselves. And sure, I know that the media told you that like the way in which, but whatever, they're wrong. It's not true. Don't have a winner or loser mentality. That's gonna like screw up your mind like forever. And if you think that that's the idea of a loser, then you're already thinking wrong. Okay, like you're already thinking in a way that's going to give you a lot of harm. Because what I'm saying is, Trump, even though he was the top person out of every 10 million, which is an extraordinarily rare situation to be in, right? So he shouldn't be recommending that to anyone. But even though he had all that, he also had the narcissistic style. So he was still driven in a significant fraction of his life by this combination balance of like having some pain from not being like adored and understood and loved and whatever enough. And the kind of personality that has that is going to be conducive to suffering, even if you turn out to be the winner, right? So it's really tricky for all people. For losers and winners lose from having this comparison competition mentality. Have goals, but don't have goals that are like in what rank you want to be in something in the world.